Sir, first class isn't open for casual passengers today. Please step back. The sentence landed like a slap across the cabin's calm. Darius Langston looked up slowly, momentarily unsure the words were meant for him. But Rachel Coleman, the flight attendant standing before him, was staring straight at him. Expression firm, tablet in hand, arms crossed. Darius sat comfortably in seat 2A on Liberty Air Flight LA225, dressed in a white shirt and black trousers, a worn leather briefcase tucked neatly beneath the seat. Nothing about him screamed wealth or status. That was intentional. Rachel, however, made no effort to hide her assumption. "I'm sorry," Darius replied, keeping his voice steady. Rachel's lips tightened. "This seat is not available to you. Please move to the rear cabin." "I believe this is my assigned seat," Darius said calmly, reaching into his briefcase. He opened the Liberty Air app on his phone and turned the screen toward her. "Seat 2A, first class. Confirmed, booked 3 weeks ago." Rachel took a quick glance, then frowned. "Do you have ID?" Without protest, Darius handed over his license. Around them, a few passengers had started paying attention. A teenage girl 3 rows back had her phone angled toward the aisle. A suited man in 4C paused his typing and glanced up. Rachel tapped on her tablet again, then sighed. "There must be a mistake," she said curtly. "That seat has been reassigned to a passenger with a medical priority status. I'll need you to relocate." Darius raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His posture remained still, but something in his gaze shifted. He had seen this pattern before, just dressed in newer words, and he knew exactly where it could lead. "Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments. We're just getting started." Rachel returned from the galley, this time with another flight attendant, Lauren Beck. Lauren gave Darius a quick glance, then looked at Rachel, confused. Rachel leaned over and whispered something. Lauren's eyebrows twitched, but she said nothing. Her body language was hesitant, like someone realizing the water was deeper than it looked. Rachel turned back to Darius, expression cool and clipped. "Sir, we're still seeing a discrepancy. There's no confirmed first-class ticket under your name in our internal system." Darius, still seated, reopened his phone. "I have the confirmation here. Flight LA225, seat 2A, booked directly through Liberty Air. I can pull up the email receipt too if you'd like." He tapped calmly through the app. Rachel crossed her arms. "What's on your phone doesn't override our system records. There could have been a booking error." Darius nodded once. "Then I suggest we double-check your system before making assumptions." Just then, the man in the neighboring seat, Travis Brennan, late 40s, tan skin, gold wedding band, expensive watch, leaned toward the aisle with a smug half-smile. "Brother," he said loud enough for others to hear, "if you needed a seat up here so bad, you could have just said something. No need to perform for everyone." Darius blinked once. "I wasn't performing. I presented documentation and sat where I was assigned." Travis chuckled. "Look, I've been in sales 20 years. I know a hustle when I see one. You're probably about to pitch some $50,000 startup and figured this seat would make you look important." Darius looked over slowly. His voice didn't rise. "Actually, I'm preparing final terms for a $500 million equity deal." Travis laughed. "Sure you are. You in mergers and acquisitions too? Come on, man, let's be serious. If you were closing something that big, you'd be flying private." Lauren Beck shifted uncomfortably. Rachel stepped in again, her voice louder now. "Sir, we need you to cooperate. You're currently delaying boarding." "I'm sitting in the seat I paid for," Darius answered. "That's not refusing to cooperate. That's following instructions printed on my ticket." Rachel turned to Lauren. "Call ground security. Mark him non-compliant." Lauren hesitated. "Rachel, I said call it." Lauren walked to the intercom reluctantly. Meanwhile, a teenage girl 2 rows back, Kayla Moore, was whispering into her phone camera. "They just called him non-compliant. He hasn't even raised his voice. This is insane." Her TikTok stream crossed 700 viewers. The man in 4C lowered his laptop and looked around, visibly uneasy. He wasn't the only one. Phones were now in multiple hands. The tension in the cabin was sharp and silent. Travis, now reclining, muttered with amusement, "This is exactly why they board us first, So we don't have to deal with this stuff. Darius closed his phone and folded his hands. He had faced worse than Travis Brennan before, but there was a weight pressing in his chest. Not anger, not fear. Recognition, familiarity. He had lived this moment before, in boardrooms and bank offices, but never this openly, this blatantly. He took a breath. The next move was coming, and this time he would document everything. 2 minutes passed before a uniformed figure appeared at the front of the aircraft. Officer Marcus Carter, part of Liberty Air's ground operations security team, walked down the aisle with a calm, measured gait. He was in his late 40s, black, with a close-shaved head and a quiet authority that made passengers sit up straighter, without realizing it. He looked around briefly, then addressed the cabin crew. "Someone reported a non-compliant passenger in first class?" he asked evenly. Rachel Coleman stepped forward, posture straight. "Yes, officer. Passenger in 2A. He refuses to comply with a seating reassignment. He's been asked multiple times to return to economy, but is remaining in the seat." Carter glanced toward the man in question. Darius Langston sat still, composed, a soft leather briefcase at his feet and his phone in hand. Without waiting to be prompted, Darius looked up and spoke calmly. "Officer, my name is Darius Langston. Here is my digital boarding pass," he said, tilting his phone forward, "and my government ID." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a second item. "This is also a printout of my confirmation email from Liberty Air." Carter stepped closer, accepting the documents without a word. He examined the phone screen, compared the ID, and flipped briefly through the printed itinerary. Then he looked at Rachel. "Everything appears valid. Seat 2A, confirmed booking. Name matches. Purchase date, 3 weeks ago. Platinum frequent flyer status." Rachel's tone cooled, but she didn't back down. "That seat was reassigned last minute to a passenger with medical considerations. I was told verbally before final boarding." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Do you have that directive in writing?" "It came from the gate. I don't have a copy." At that moment, Lauren Beck, the second flight attendant, who had been standing near the galley, shifted uncomfortably. Her eyes flicked toward Darius, then Rachel, and then toward the growing number of passengers paying attention. Some had already lifted their phones. Subtle, but obvious to anyone looking. In row 3, Kayla Moore, still live streaming, whispered to her audience, "He just showed them all his proof, and now they're still saying it's not his seat? This is wild." In the adjacent seat, Travis Brennan, now leaning smugly on the armrest, muttered, "I told you. Brother should have just taken his place and avoided the drama." Darius didn't even turn. "This isn't about drama. It's about being treated like I don't belong, despite following every rule." Travis snorted. Yeah. Corporate man with a point to prove. "Let me guess. You're about to call your lawyer next?" Officer Carter turned slightly. "Sir," he addressed Travis, "please refrain from interjecting. Let me handle this." More phones came up. The businessman in 4C was now typing vigorously on his laptop, and the atmosphere had shifted entirely. First class wasn't silent. It was brimming with unspoken tension. Carter looked at Darius again. "Sir, would you be willing to step off the aircraft temporarily so we can verify this calmly with the gate supervisor?" Darius looked straight into his eyes. There was no defiance, no resistance, only a tired clarity. "I'll comply, but I'm documenting this process. For the record, I am leaving my assigned first-class seat on Liberty Air Flight LA225, despite having a valid ticket, ID, and boarding pass. I am doing so voluntarily to avoid disruption, not because of any wrongdoing." "Understood," Carter nodded. Darius stood, adjusted his shirt cuffs, and reached for his briefcase. As he turned into the aisle, several phones followed his every step. Kayla's stream passed 2,000 live viewers. Back in the galley, Rachel whispered to Lauren, "This is standard procedure. He'll be rebooked if needed." Lauren didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the aisle, where Darius was now disappearing into the jet bridge. Officer Carter behind him. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. Moments later, the cabin doors closed behind them, but the repercussions had only just begun. The businessman in 4C opened his LinkedIn app and typed, Just watched a first-class passenger with full documentation removed from Liberty Air Flight LA225. No explanation given. Multiple passengers recording. Very concerning. His post went live within seconds. Meanwhile, a man in 3B turned to Lauren quietly. "Do you know who that man is?" Lauren shook her head, but not convincingly. Neither did Rachel. Not yet. As the cabin door closed behind Darius and Officer Carter, a strange stillness settled over first class. But it was a quiet filled with tension, not calm. All around, passengers exchanged uncertain looks, many glancing toward the front of the aircraft where the scene had just played out. Some were whispering, some were still filming. Kayla Moore, sitting in row 3 with her phone propped against her tray table, was now narrating directly to her stream. "Okay, y'all saw that, right? That man had everything. His boarding pass, his ID, even printed proof. They still pulled him off the plane. Like, what?" Her viewer count had climbed to over 2,200. The chat window scrolled rapidly with reactions. "He was calm the whole time. Did they just racially profile that guy? Name and shame the airline. Someone call a lawyer." Meanwhile, Lauren Beck stood silently in the galley, her arms folded, eyes unfocused. Rachel had returned from the jet bridge and was attempting to maintain control of the situation, talking quietly to another crew member, occasionally checking her tablet. But her body language was tighter now, her movements sharp. From row 4, a businessman named Alan Ritter finally spoke up. "Excuse me," he said toward Lauren. "Did that gentleman have the correct seat or not?" Lauren hesitated. She wasn't sure if she should answer, but then she nodded slowly. "Yes, his boarding pass said 2A. It was valid." Ritter frowned. "Then why was he removed?" Lauren didn't reply. Nearby, another passenger, a woman in a tailored blazer, whispered to the person next to her, "Something's off. If he wasn't aggressive and had a ticket, what reason could they possibly have?" Back in the terminal, Darius stood just outside gate 14B, speaking quietly into his phone. "Yes, I've exited the aircraft voluntarily. Everything's on record. Begin preparing for escalation procedures if needed." A few people waiting for other flights had gathered nearby, confused but curious. One woman in yoga pants murmured to her husband, "Is that the guy from the plane? Everyone's filming him." Darius put his phone away and stood calmly, posture straight, not seeking attention but certainly not hiding. His presence drew attention anyway. Above, the screen at the gate now read, "Flight LA225, delayed 21 minutes. Passengers in nearby boarding zones glanced over. Murmurs began circulating not only among those on the flight, but among others in the terminal. Then from the corridor, a firm voice cut through the noise. "Who's in charge here?" A woman in a navy blazer approached, her security badge clipped to her lapel. Janet Williams, terminal supervisor. She looked like someone who had cleaned up many messes before, but even she seemed to sense this was not a normal delay. Officer Carter turned toward her. "Passenger documentation dispute," he said. "Everything checks out on his end. Boarding pass valid, ID confirmed, but he was asked to leave due to a supposed reassignment." Janet furrowed her brow. "Who requested the reassignment?" Carter gestured toward the cabin. "Flight crew. Lead flight attendant said it was a medical priority reassignment, but couldn't provide written confirmation." Janet turned toward Darius. "Mr. Langston," he said, extending a hand. "Darius Langston." She shook it briefly, then paused. "Thank you for your cooperation. Would you mind stepping aside to speak with me privately?" Darius nodded. "Of course." But even as they walked toward the nearby gate office, at least 5 phones turned to follow. Kayla's stream had surpassed 3,000 viewers, and the hashtag Liberty Air Discrimination had begun trending in the TikTok sidebar. Inside the aircraft, Rachel tried to maintain her professional facade, but she noticed the growing number of eyes watching her. Passengers weren't just silent, they were skeptical now. Lauren whispered to her quietly, "You should have just double-checked the system." Rachel didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the door, as if waiting for a problem to walk back in. But the real problem was already outside, and it was spreading. Janet led Darius into a small gateside office, tucked behind the counter. The walls were thin, the lighting clinical. There was a desk with a monitor, a set of file drawers, and 2 chairs, one of which Darius chose not to sit in. Instead, he placed his briefcase gently on the desk and remained standing, composed but firm. Janet took a breath and turned to face him. "Mr. Langston, thank you for your patience. I want to resolve this quickly and fairly. Can I confirm again, you had a valid boarding pass for seat 2A in first class?" Darius nodded. "Yes, digital and printed confirmation. I also have frequent flyer platinum status with Liberty Air." Janet tapped into her terminal. "Okay, I'm pulling up the manifest. One moment." Outside, through the narrow window, the terminal buzzed with low-level energy. Several passengers had begun pacing the area outside the office. A teenage boy pressed his face near the glass, trying to film through the reflection. Back in the aircraft, the mood had shifted. People weren't just murmuring now. They were questioning. A man in 3C leaned forward toward Lauren. Was there a medical emergency? Did someone else need that seat? Lauren shook her head softly. No medical boarding note was submitted, at least not through my system. Rachel stood rigid by the galley, clearly hearing the comment, but choosing not to acknowledge it. In the gate office, Darius calmly reached into his briefcase and retrieved a slim black leather card holder. He slid a card across the table to Janet. "I believe this will help clarify things." Janet picked it up. Her eyes scanned the text, then widened. Darius Langston, Chief Executive Officer, Equinox Holdings Major Equity Partner. Liberty Air. Her posture stiffened. She looked back at him, this time with very different eyes. "You're part owner?" "I acquired an 18% stake in Liberty Air through Equinox Holdings during the last investment round. It's public information, though not widely known outside financial circles. I also sit on the corporate advisory board." Janet exhaled slowly. "And no one on this crew knew that?" "I made no effort to inform them," Darius said, voice steady. "I prefer to observe service as a regular customer." Janet nodded slowly, processing. What happened back there was unacceptable. Darius opened his briefcase again and retrieved a slim folder labeled Governance, Shareholder Events. "This isn't just about inconvenience. Per the Liberty Air Shareholder Agreement, Section 14, 3, any documented case of discrimination or reputational harm qualifies as a material incident, triggering a board-level review." Janet looked pale. "And you're planning to file under that clause?" "I already have the documentation in progress." Outside, a woman had stepped away from the crowd and was now walking toward the gate office. She knocked gently before entering. It was Dr. Patricia Voss, the physician from first class. "Excuse me," she said to Janet. "I was on that flight. I saw the entire interaction. Mr. Langston presented all the appropriate documentation. He was calm and respectful. He did absolutely nothing wrong." Janet turned to her, grateful but surprised. "Thank you, Doctor." "Voss, Patricia Voss." Darius nodded. She was a witness, one of many. At that same moment, Kayla Moore's stream ticked past 4,000 live viewers, and the comments were exploding. "Dr. Voss just walked in. This guy owns part of the airline. Y'all, this is wild. I'm saving this live." In the office, Janet looked down at the business card again. "Mr. Langston, I honestly didn't know." "No one did. I'm deeply sorry." "This isn't about being known," Darius replied. "It's about how Liberty Air treats those who aren't." The phrase hung in the air for several seconds. Too simple to ignore, too powerful to forget. Just outside the gate office, the ripple effects of what happened on Flight LA-225 were beginning to break the surface. At least 3 passengers who had witnessed the incident were now posting live updates on Twitter and LinkedIn. Screenshots of Darius's business card had been discreetly captured and shared. One tweet read, "Turns out the guy Liberty Air kicked out of first class literally owns part of the airline. This is about to go corporate." In the gate office, Janet sat still, her hands resting flat on the desk, staring at the printed governance document in front of her. Darius stood nearby, quietly organizing his materials. Every movement was precise, deliberate, and calm. The kind of calm that unsettles people in positions of assumed authority. Janet finally broke the silence. "I need to escalate this to headquarters. Our executive team should be informed." "That would be wise," Darius replied, "but I suggest you do it quickly. The situation is no longer contained." As if on cue, her radio crackled. Supervisor Williams, this is Central Ops. We're receiving multiple external inquiries from media and corporate comms. Do you have eyes on Mr. Langston? Janet pressed the button. Affirmative. He's with me. I'll provide a full report within 10 minutes. When she turned back, Darius was holding out his phone. On the screen were multiple live streams, each showing footage from different passengers on the plane. One in particular, Kayla Moore's, had over 5,000 live viewers now. Her camera zoomed in on the gate entrance, commentary flooding the chat. Janet exhaled. This is going viral, isn't it? It already is, Darius said, and the longer Liberty Air delays accountability, the worse the impact will be. At that moment, Officer Carter re-entered the office with a composed expression. Terminal's buzzing, he said. People filming everything. Words spreading fast. Janet nodded. I need to make a call. But before she could lift the phone, the office door opened again. This time it was Captain Richard Monroe, the pilot of Flight LA-225. His cap was tucked under his arm, silver gray hair slightly disheveled, face tight with concern. Janet, he said, I just spoke to the crew. What's going on? Janet gestured toward Darius. Captain Monroe, this is Mr. Langston. Monroe's eyes flicked toward him. The passenger from 2A? Darius extended his hand. Darius Langston, CEO of Equinox Holdings. Monroe froze mid-motion. Equinox Holdings? Yes, Darius confirmed. And through it, I own 18% of Liberty Air. The color drained slightly from Monroe's face. He looked at Janet. Why the hell wasn't this flagged? It was never supposed to get this far, Janet muttered. I agree, Darius said, which is why we're here. Back in the terminal, passengers were now gathered in groups near the gate. Some leaned against posts, others sat on their carry-ons. A few flight attendants from other gates stood nearby, whispering among themselves. Overheard conversations ranged from confusion to outrage. He got pulled from first class for no reason? He's a major investor? That flight attendant's in serious trouble. Rachel Coleman, still inside the aircraft, was pacing quietly in the galley. Lauren Beck sat near the jump seat, hands clasped, avoiding eye contact with anyone. A senior technician from airport operations had entered the cabin and requested to review internal records, further unnerving the crew. Meanwhile, Darius turned to Janet with a final tone of calm certainty. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to correct a systemic pattern, and I plan to do so, formally. Janet gave a small nod. Understood. Her phone buzzed. The screen displayed Patricia Vance, CEO Liberty Air. She looked up at Darius. You should take that, he said, and put it on speaker. Janet hesitated for a beat as the name on her phone flashed insistently. Patricia Vance, CEO Liberty Air. Her fingers hovered over the screen before finally accepting the call and switching it to speaker. Patricia Vance speaking, came a clipped, tense voice. Janet, is Mr. Langston with you? Yes, ma'am, standing right here, Janet replied, casting a glance at Darius. Put him on the phone. Now. Without a word, Janet turned the device slightly, allowing Darius to step closer. The phone, now resting on the desk between them, became a makeshift conference speaker. Officer Carter stood silently by the door. Dr. Voss remained nearby, arms crossed, watching everything unfold. Ms. Vance, Darius said, his voice even but unmistakably firm. This is Darius Langston. There was a pause, a long, tight pause. Darius, please tell me this is some misunderstanding. I wish it were, he replied, but it's not. I was removed from my paid first-class seat. Despite presenting valid identification, a confirmed boarding pass, and frequent flyer credentials, I was treated like a fraud, in front of dozens of witnesses, and now thousands more are watching online. Patricia's voice dropped half a tone. How bad is it? Your airline is trending under Liberty Air discrimination. Live footage from the cabin is circulating across 5 platforms. Commentators, attorneys, activists, they're all watching. So are your investors. Another silence. Then, what do you need? Darius's tone didn't change. First, acknowledgement that this was not an isolated error. It was symptomatic of a broader issue, how Liberty Air staff judge passengers based on appearance, not facts. Patricia sighed. Darius, I need actionable requests. Something I can take to my team. Here they are, he replied. Number 1, immediate review and suspension of all flight crew involved until an internal investigation is complete. That includes the lead flight attendant, Rachel Coleman. Janet's eyes widened. Carter's jaw twitched slightly. Understood, Patricia said. Continue. Number 2, public commitment to a third-party audit of Liberty Air's passenger treatment incidents over the past 18 months. This must include discrimination complaints, mishandled seat reassignments, and customer service failures. No, I'll have legal draft a scope, Patricia muttered. Number 3, establish a passenger equity board comprised of internal and external voices, including those with lived experiences of bias. I want this group to oversee reforms. Patricia was quiet again, but when she spoke, her voice carried weight. You've already thought this through. I've lived through it before, Darius replied, and I've spent years building systems to prevent it. This isn't about punishing a crew. This is about transforming a culture. Outside the office, the crowd had swelled. More passengers gathered, phones lifted discreetly or openly. A Liberty Air station manager stood nearby, muttering updates into a headset. One screen behind the check-in desk now displayed a news headline. Breaking airline exec removed from first class, live stream sparks firestorm. Kayla Moore's live stream hit 5,800 viewers. Her voice trembled slightly with adrenaline. Guys, I think we're watching corporate history happen in real time. Back inside, Patricia's voice softened. Darius, we're going to fix this. I promise. But I need your help doing it right. You'll have it, he replied. But it starts today. Not with meetings next quarter. Not with draft language. Today. Understood, she said. I'll issue the orders immediately. And thank you for not walking away. Darius didn't respond immediately. He glanced around the room. At Janet, still pale and quiet. At Officer Carter, unreadable. At Dr. Voss, steady as stone. I'm not here for revenge, he said. I'm here to make sure no one else has to go through this again. Within minutes of the phone call ending, Liberty Air's headquarters was in full motion. Emails were flying across departments, legal teams were looped in, and an emergency meeting was scheduled for that very evening. But in the gate office, the focus remained razor sharp. Darius reached back into his briefcase and withdrew a neatly tabbed portfolio labeled Equinox Internal Proposal, Phase 1. He placed it on the desk, turning it toward Janet and Officer Carter. Dr. Voss leaned forward slightly to read the title. I want to be clear, Darius said. This is not about embarrassing Liberty Air. I'm a stakeholder. I have no interest in destabilizing the company. But accountability is non-negotiable. Janet nodded slowly, still somewhat dazed. What exactly are you proposing? I've drafted a 5-point corrective action framework, Darius explained. These are the baseline conditions I expect Liberty Air to adopt if you want to retain Equinox Holdings investment and to begin rebuilding public trust. Carter whistled under his breath. Dr. Voss murmured, He came prepared. Shadno. Point 1, Darius began, opening the folder. Immediate termination or formal disciplinary proceedings for any personnel involved in racial profiling or unjustified ejection of passengers, pending verified investigation. This must be accompanied by written justification for each action taken. Janet scribbled notes furiously. Carter simply nodded. Point 2, mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing employees within 30 days. No exceptions. Not once a year check-the-box training, but real third-party, measurable workshops. Agreed, Janet said almost instinctively. Point 3, implementation of an anonymous reporting system for discrimination or misconduct, managed independently, not by Liberty Air HR. External firm, she asked. Correct. A rotating panel of legal and ethics experts, and quarterly audits of all complaints received and actions taken. Dr. Voss looked impressed. That's actually more comprehensive than most hospitals do. Point 4, Darius continued, establish a dedicated Office of Passenger Equity. One senior executive, reporting directly to the board, whose role is to monitor, enforce, and advocate for equitable treatment across all classes, demographics, and routes. Would you nominate someone? Janet asked. I can recommend qualified candidates, Darius replied, but Liberty must own this. He paused, then turned to the final page. Point 5. Liberty Air will issue a public apology within 72 hours. Not just to me, to every passenger who has experienced discrimination while flying your airline. It must acknowledge systemic shortcomings and commit to actionable change. Janet looked up. Legal will resist that. Darius met her gaze. Then your legal team is underestimating the crisis you're in. Outside the gate office, the media had arrived. A small local affiliate team was already setting up a camera. Someone from Liberty's PR team was frantically waving them away, but it was too late. The story had legs, and it was running fast. Screens in the terminal displayed live feeds from social media. Trending topics included Equinox CEO, passenger equity, and discrimination in the skies. Kayla Moore, still streaming from a bench nearby, narrated breathlessly, "He just laid out a 5-point plan to overhaul Liberty Air. I swear this man walked on that flight as a customer and left as a movement." Back in the room, Darius closed the portfolio. "You have until end of business today to signal acceptance of these terms. Tomorrow I present them to the Equinox board and our legal counsel." Janet swallowed hard. "And if we refuse?" "Then Equinox Holdings divests our 18% stake," Darius replied. "And we make that decision public." Silence. Only the hum of the terminal filled the air. "Understood," Janet said finally. "I'll make sure this reaches Patricia Vance immediately." Darius extended his hand. "Then let's make sure this is the last time something like this ever happens." 2 hours after Darius Langston's proposal hit Janet's inbox, the gears of Liberty Air's corporate machinery were turning at full speed. Patricia Vance, CEO, sat in the company's New York executive conference room, facing 8 of her senior officers and 3 board members, one of whom was frantically tracking social media sentiment in real time. "We are in a nosedive," said Ron Ortega, the head of corporate communications. "That 5-point framework is trending under 4 hashtags. Press is calling it the Langston Doctrine." Patricia exhaled and looked directly at her chief legal officer. "Can we agree to all of it?" The attorney, a tall, pale man named Walter Reeves, shook his head. "You'll face resistance from unions over fast-track terminations. Public apology opens the door for class action claims. But," he paused, glancing at the stock ticker displayed on the wall, "the risk of not acting is much greater now." The stock had dropped 2.1% since noon. Back at the airport, Janet returned to the gate office and found Darius reviewing a new set of documents. His calm had not faded. If anything, it had deepened. He looked up and nodded as she entered. "I've just gotten word from Patricia Vance," Janet said. "They're accepting all 5 points, immediate implementation, and she'd like to speak with you again. Officially this time, via press conference." Darius considered for a moment. "Will it be live?" "Yes. She wants to control the narrative before it spreads further." "I'll join," he replied. "But not as a prop." "You'll lead it," Janet said. 15 minutes later, Liberty Air's executive team initiated a remote live stream from corporate HQ. Across terminals in 4 airports, in break rooms, on tablets and mobile devices, employees and customers alike watched as Patricia Vance appeared on screen. Her expression was composed but serious. "Today," she began, "Liberty Air failed one of its most loyal and respected passengers, Mr. Darius Langston, CEO of Equinox Holdings and a key shareholder in this company." She paused. "But more importantly, we failed our values. We allowed appearance to override facts, bias to override truth." The screen split and Darius appeared from the gate office, standing behind Janet and Officer Carter, with Dr. Voss beside him. "I thank Ms. Vance for her words," he said, "but today isn't about me. It's about the thousands of passengers whose stories never reach this level of visibility. It's about systems that reward silence and punish accountability." The video feed surged. Viewership crossed 70,000 in under 5 minutes. Darius continued. "As of this moment, Liberty Air has committed to a 5-point plan that includes third-party audits, anonymous reporting systems, dedicated oversight, and mandatory training for every public-facing employee. More importantly, they have agreed to begin this process now, not months from now, not after legal reviews, now." On social media, reaction exploded. This is how change happens. Langston didn't just talk, he brought a blueprint. Other airlines better take notes. Back in the terminal, several Liberty Air employees gathered around phones and monitors, watching their leadership confront a reckoning they had avoided for too long. Lauren Beck, watching quietly from a break room near Gate 17, exhaled and whispered, "It's finally happening." Rachel Coleman sat in an HR holding area, her uniform jacket folded on her lap, waiting for her own meeting. She scrolled silently through the comments online, some angry, some mocking, many calling for her dismissal. She looked up at the wall clock. 5 hours. That's how fast everything had changed. 71 hours later, Darius Langston sat in his Chicago office overlooking Lake Michigan, reviewing the first batch of implementation reports from Liberty Air. His assistant, Maria Delgado, placed a color-coded binder on his desk with a quiet smile. "Termination letters executed yesterday," she said. "Rachel Coleman and Captain Monroe, both dismissed with cause. Lauren Beck was not disciplined, but requested voluntary retraining. She's now helping draft the new onboarding materials." Darius flipped through the documents without pause. "And the anonymous reporting system? Operational as of 6 a.m. this morning. External firm, fully encrypted, accessible to both passengers and employees. 3 reports already filed. Bias training? 8-hour module, developed with an outside agency. First 2,000 employees will complete it within 2 weeks. Full rollout for all staff within 30 days. Darius leaned back, exhaling slowly. He wasn't satisfied, not yet, but he was encouraged. On his screen, Liberty Air's stock had rebounded, up 3.2% since the day of the incident. Investors responded well to swift, transparent correction. Patricia Vance had appeared on CNBC that morning under a new headline: "Liberty Air launches Dignity in Flight Initiative." Her tone was somber but resolute. "Mr. Langston's experience was unacceptable," she told viewers, "but his response, methodical, firm, and future-focused, has given us a path forward." Other companies were watching closely. Delta issued a press release within 48 hours, announcing a full review of their own escalation protocols. Southwest's leadership reached out to Equinox Holdings, requesting consultation. United quietly removed a regional supervisor whose complaint history had resurfaced in the wake of the trending hashtag passenger equity. The Department of Transportation confirmed they had opened a policy review panel. One official, speaking anonymously, admitted, "We've never seen one incident spark so much voluntary reform. This isn't just a story, it's a shift." In his inbox, Darius received a message titled, "Thank you." It came from Angela Thompson, a young Black MBA graduate who had quietly watched the live stream while commuting home. "Mr. Langston, I was removed from a business class seat 2 months ago. I didn't argue. I didn't film. I went home and told myself it wasn't worth the fight. Watching you stand calmly with evidence and demand change changed me. I've since partnered with the ACLU to begin documenting passenger bias nationwide. You showed me what real leadership looks like." Angela Thompson. Darius saved the email to a folder marked Impact. A few days later, Darius was invited to speak at the Transportation Equity Forum, hosted by the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. He declined the keynote, choosing instead to facilitate a workshop titled "From Incident to Infrastructure: Turning Stories into Systems." Over 200 transportation executives, regulators, and community leaders attended. He opened with a simple statement: "Change doesn't begin with outrage, it begins with documentation, and it becomes permanent through structure." The room was silent, listening. When the panel ended, a senior VP from Greyhound Bus Lines approached him with a handshake. "We'd like to adapt your 5-point model. Our industry needs this too." That evening, Darius returned to his hotel, opened his laptop, and reviewed a dashboard created by Equinox's data team. It showed 12 major transportation companies had initiated new bias audits, 5 new anonymous reporting portals launched across airlines and rail, over 5,000 uses of the hashtag passenger equity in under 1 week. But most importantly, 9 different passengers had come forward with documented incidents, submitting them through the newly launched public platform Darius had helped fund. As he closed his laptop and stood to stretch, Darius allowed himself the smallest smile. The flight had been delayed, but the movement was ahead of schedule. 2 months after the incident on Flight LA-225, Darius Langston boarded another Liberty airplane. Same airline, same route. Chicago to Atlanta, and once again, seat 2 away. But this time, something was different. The flight attendant who greeted him was a young black man named David, no older than 28. He wore the new Liberty Air name tag with a discreet blue and gold pin, the symbol of having completed equity and inclusion training. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Langston," David said warmly. "It's an honor to have you flying with us today. If there's anything I can do to make your trip more comfortable, please let me know." Darius smiled. "You already did." As he settled into his seat, he noticed something else. The cabin was more diverse than he remembered. A Latina mother and daughter in 1C and 1D, a South Asian entrepreneur in 3B, a white senior veteran in full-service cap at 2B who nodded respectfully toward Darius, and everyone, every single one of them, was being treated with the same dignity. Later during the flight, David stopped by with a quiet word. "Sir, I just want to say thank you. I read your proposal. We trained on your 5-point plan. You changed how we think." "It wasn't just me," Darius replied. "It was everyone who refused to stay silent." After landing, Darius exited the aircraft quietly. No cameras, no announcements. But as he passed through the terminal, a young woman near the bookstore stepped forward shyly. "Mr. Langston, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say thank you. You inspired me to report something that happened to me last year. I didn't have the courage before." Darius didn't ask for details. He simply nodded. "You found it when it mattered. That's what counts." By the end of that week, over 40,000 employees across the Liberty Air system had completed the new training. The anonymous portal had logged 72 reports, all under investigation, and 3 other U.S. carriers had adopted the exact framework Darius had implemented. Back in Chicago, the Equity Navigation Alliance, a new foundation seeded by Equinox Holdings and matched by Liberty Air, opened its doors. Their mission: protect whistleblowers, empower passengers, hold systems accountable. Dr. Patricia Voss, now on the advisory board, described the initiative as one of the most actionable civil rights mechanisms aviation has ever seen. Even Sarah Coleman, the flight attendant who had initiated the original conflict, requested to join the Foundation's retraining tour. After months of reflection and independent coaching, she had become an outspoken advocate for unconscious bias reform. During a closed-door session, she told Darius, "I can't change what I did, but I can change what I helped prevent. Thank you for not destroying me." Darius replied simply, "Accountability isn't about destruction, it's about reconstruction." Media outlets dubbed the turnaround the Langston effect. Harvard Business School used the case in a semester-long ethics seminar. Delta Airlines launched a partnership with the Alliance, sponsoring travel equity audits across 20 airports. And Liberty Air? They issued their first-ever annual passenger equity report, publicly listing data on discrimination, complaints, response times, training compliance, and improvement benchmarks. It wasn't perfect, but it was public, and it was working. 12 months later, Darius Langston stood behind a podium at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. The auditorium was filled to capacity, nearly 800 attendees, from transportation executives and civil rights lawyers to university students and former airline employees. But it was the millions watching via live stream that gave the moment its true scale. Behind him, a large screen displayed the session title, "Dignity in Motion: Systems, Stories, and the Flight That Changed Everything." Darius adjusted the microphone, then began. "1 year ago today, I was asked to leave my first-class seat, not because of a mistaken booking, but because of assumptions made based on how I looked." He paused. Silence was complete. That moment could have been just another injustice added to the pile, but instead it became documentation, then strategy, then transformation. He clicked to the first slide, a timeline showing the fallout from Flight LA-225, implementation milestones, stock rebounds, training completions, policy reforms. The audience nodded, murmured, took notes. "In 12 months, we've seen measurable drops in discrimination reports across 5 major airlines," he said. "We've seen anonymous reporting adopted by regional train and bus services. We've seen partnerships between labor unions and equity organizations take root. Another slide showed the hashtag passenger equity, now used over 300,000 times, translated into 8 languages. But this, he said, was never about a hashtag. It was about rewriting the rules for who gets heard, for who gets believed. A soft stir ran through the crowd. One hand rose in the front row. It was Angela Thompson, now a public advocate and lead analyst for the Equity Navigation Alliance. She stood and spoke without waiting. "I just want to say, you didn't just change a system. You gave people like me a playbook and a reason not to walk away." Applause followed. Later during the Q&A, another hand went up in the back row. A familiar face stepped forward. Sarah Coleman, the same woman who had once told Darius, "This section is not for casual passengers." Now she wore no uniform, only a quiet badge clipped to her blazer that read, "Diversity Consultant, Aviation Reform Network." She cleared her throat. "Mr. Langston, I was the one who made that assumption, and I just want to say thank you, not just for forgiving me, but for proving that we can learn." Darius looked at her for a long moment, then said, "True systems change does not aim to destroy individuals. It aims to convert pain into purpose." The applause that followed was not loud. It was slow, rising, honest, the sound of understanding settling in. As the session closed, Darius gave his final address directly to the live stream camera, speaking to the thousands watching from airports, classrooms, living rooms. If you've ever been humiliated, overlooked, judged by appearance or accent or background, your story matters. If you've ever witnessed injustice and stayed silent because you weren't sure it was enough, now you know it was. What happened on Flight LA 225 wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror, and we chose to build a window through it. He leaned slightly forward. "The tools are here. The precedent is set. You don't need to be a CEO to demand dignity. You just need to speak, record, report, and refuse to accept that this is just how it is. Let this be the last time, not just another time." The final slide appeared on screen. Passenger Equity Reporting Platform, now available nationwide. The camera zoomed out, and the live stream ended.